February 14, 1942. Deep beneath Harvard University, in the basement of Converse Laboratory, a quiet revolution began. In the dim light, a single match flared as Professor Louis Feezer set fire to a small lump of jellied gasoline. It didn't burst or flash like normal fuel. Instead, it latched on, burning steadily, almost alive, refusing to go out. In his lab notes, Feezer recorded the result. Aluminum naphthenate and aluminum palmitate transformed gasoline into a thick gel, first resembling applesauce, then curing into something closer to rubber. The 42-year-old organic chemist paused, laid down his pen, and picked up a secure phone. What he had just created would soon reshape warfare in the Pacific. It was a weapon designed to reach where explosives could not, into caves, reinforced bunkers, and underground fortresses. Feezer did not yet realize that his Valentine's Day experiment would ignite the most destructive incendiary campaign the world had ever seen. By 1942, the Pacific War had taught American commanders a grim truth. Japanese forces rarely surrendered. Instead, they entrenched themselves. They carved defenses into volcanic rock, poured concrete reinforced with coral, and built vast underground networks. Iwo Jima alone contained over 11 miles of tunnels. On Okinawa, ancient burial tombs were converted into machine gun emplacements. Bombs skipped harmlessly across rock. Artillery did little more than scar the surface. The battlefield demanded something different, something that could flow into darkness and burn defenders out of the earth itself. That solution came from an unexpected place. Feezer had originally been researching synthetic rubber when the war began. A man who once opposed chemical weapons, he set aside his objections when national survival was at stake. Louis Frederick Feezer, born April 7, 1899, in Columbus, Ohio, was best known for his work on vitamin K and blood clotting. He was about to become the architect of modern incendiary warfare. The first real test took place on July 4, 1942, not at a secret proving ground, but on Harvard's soccer field, wedged between the business school and the stadium. Feezer poured 45 pounds of the compound into a shallow pool of water as the Cambridge Fire Department watched uneasily. Nearby, tennis players continued their matches, unaware of what was about to happen. When a white phosphorus igniter set off the mixture, flaming clots of burning gel exploded outward, splashing into water and continuing to burn. The tennis players screamed and ran. The fire clung to everything it touched. Water was useless against it. The substance burned at 800 to 1,200 degrees Celsius. Feezer's math was exact. This new incendiary burned 6 times hotter than thermite. Petrol coat, Joek Hai Pal main by anchor fireball ban car fat jada, napalm exankri, Nyantra dar main auge bada the, AC dar jo si gilfin kuma, bunker ka slit, or pillbox ka firing ports ku andar gus sakti ti. Aluminum soap compounds any isi ek chipchipi, gel jc banawadi, jo diwaren se, capton se, or insani jism se cheapak jadi ti. Shurawadi trials main, paramperic incendiary bombs lagbag 60 main se surf ek bar asar daiketa. Napalm any hard teen main se ek hamel main natijadia. Enkti high coffee the, but a sol chronic chemistry main tea. Tur production shuru car, di guy neros products main. April 1942 Kamudyatak, Ek Bura, Suka Powder Tyar Ho Chuka the Daikni Main Bilkul Nuxen Rat. Lekin Jab ISE Petrol Kasaf Malaya Jada, to Yekuch or High Band Jada. Kuch Isa Jo Dekni Wallen Kuliyekov Nakta. Chemical Warfare Service any Hazron Tunka, Order to Dia. Dao Chemical Eniat Patent Tez Car Dia. 1943 TAC, America 5 lack napalm units Bana Rahada. 1944 TAC, Yasankya 80 lak Bahunch Chuki T. M69 incendiary bomb KO Kosker napalm. Kalia design Kia Gayada. Har bomb Kawaz and 6.2 pound or ism jelly gasoline bari hodi T. Joger high 15-foot Kader main fail Jadi T. Ace 38 M69 bombs KO Ek E46 cluster bomb main bar Jada. Jab Unchai Se Jarea Jada. To cluster 2,000-foot parkour Jada, or a Lagalag bombs port target zone main Bikar Jade. Magger Pacific Se Peli. Napalm any Europe main Apna Palarang Kaya. August 1943. Sicily par Allied invasion Cadoran, American forces any iska istamokia, Furby, iska asli imminabi bakida, un-Japanese fortifications kakalov jo paramperik hathieren, kulia lagbagajada, July 22nd, 1944. Tinian Island, Mariana Islands, Pacific Main Palibar. 2nd Marine Division ku Captain Robert Johnson, Nebraska Deca, ku Army Air Force, ku fighter bombers Purub Ki Tarafnasiye Raida, Ink Nachek Ham Bombs Naida. Ye Aircraft Pacific Theater, Kalia Tyar, Kaige Peli Napalm Weapons Lujar Raida. Hawaii SE Gup Roop SE Bejagaya Ye Incendiary Gel, Ab Ek Ace Dutchman Kasamni Asmaya Jane, Walla the Jisn Raksha Ko Kalabana Diada. Tinian Par Japanese Garrison, Colonel Kyochi Ogata Kanitripamain, Kai Mahino SE Tayari Kar Rada, 50th Infantry Regiment or Ussi Judy Units, Lagbag 9000 Sinek, Any Island Coral Cliffs, Main Gary Gufine Kotli T, Machine Gun Neshar Approach Par Nazar Rekyuda, Artillery KO Reverse Slopes Par Chapea Gaia, the Jahan Naval Bombardment Bikar Hojadada, Jab Pele Napalm Bombs Tinian Par Giri, to Surf 6 Mile Dorsai Penasi Marines Any Kuch Isa Deka Joe Unhon Pelikabi Nai Dekada. High explosive bombs Katez Damakin Ki Jaga, Narangia Ki Laren Any Japanese positions KOJ's Bahadia. Incendiary mixture Gyufin Ku Andar Gusa, Bunkers Main Bay Gaia. Firing slits asi Seep Kardahua Nache attack Bahunch Gaia. Joe Japanese Sinic Hafen Ki naval shelling Esi Bakge the Wo Apni positions Chode Carbiane Lage. Uniform Og Main Lapti Hui. Jalti Hui Petroleum Hard Cheese Esi Cheapak Jati T. Stop, drop, or roll surf og KO or Philadita. Canteen Ka Pani Donasiya or Chidak Jada. Bakni Kayak Hai Tarika the Puri Terra Esi position Chode Dina. Marine Corporal James Chun. Binoculars SE Deku, Any Apni Diary Main Lika. Jap Log on Surakan SE Bahar Nikel, A Jinka Bear Main Humian Pada Tak Naida. Wo Midi Main Lofni Lage, Og Bujane Ki Koshish Kardihu. Lekanag Rukan Kanam Hai Nahi Lurahiti. Kuch Hai Dino Main Marine Units Har Advance SE Peli Napalm Strikes, Ki Mon Karn Lagi. Japanese Strong Points. Gina neutralized Karn main Peligano Ki Menet or heavy casualties lagged the Obsurf Kuch High Minutes main Kadam Ho Jata. August 1st KO Tinian Gerchukada. 9,000 Japanese defenders main SE Surf 313 logs in the back. Lekin Tini and Par Mili Safalta Surf Surety. Saipan Par, Marine Flame Tank Operators, any Deka Key Portable Flamethrowers be close range Par Wayasar Pada Kardihane. M2 Flamethrower Thicken Fuel KO Lagbag 40 yards, Takfink Saktada. Lekin Joe Soldiers Apney Peeth Par 70 pound Fuel Udhehu, the Unka Casualty Rate 90% SE. Bizayada, the J's High Unkey Position Exposed Hodi T. Iska Solution Navy CBs. Any Dia, Jinhon Sherman Tanks KOCB. H1 Flamethrowers SE Modify Kia. Marines in he, Zippo Tanks Kate the tanks 150 yards tack liquid fire project cars Sakta, or operators KO armor protection be Dita. February 19th, 1945 KO Ace High 8 tanks Iwo Jima Par Landhu. Joe Kuch Uski Badhua. Us in Pacific Kasab's Mazbut fortifications Kakalaf Napalm Ki Bayanak effectiveness KO Sabik Kardia. February 23rd, 1945. Iwo Jima, Og or Lavaka Jahannam. Corporal Herschel Woody. Williams Dear Ek Japanese Pillbox Ki Tarap Bad Rahada. Apna M2 Flamethrower Volcanic Rock. Main Gas ETU. Uski Unit Concrete Strong Points SE Ain Wali Crossfire Main Faz Chuki T. Artillery Bikar Ho Chuki T. Naval Bombardment Fail Ho Gaiada. Sita Assault Karna Matlab Mount. Williams KO Japanese Type 92 Machine Gun Ka Barrel Firing Slit SE Bahar Nikalta Dike Rada. Golian Uski Peeth Par Lage Steel Tanks SE Takrakar Chingari and Paidakar Hiti. 20 yards. 15 yards. 10 yards Parpa Hunkti High. Usnigniter Debaya. Thicken Fuel Key Ektez Dar Slitku Andar Gusgai. Bunker Turret Body Main Betel Gaia. Andar Ka Temperature Seconds Main Crematorium SE Bizayada Ho Gaia. Concrete Thermal Shock SE Crack Hone Laga. Steel Reinforcement Rods Ted Ho Gay. machine gun ka barrel pelileo, for safwa, or for pig haugaya, and our koibian son kuch seconds esi zayada, zindan nahi race saktada, Williams egel target ki teraf bada, ek underground complex Joe tunnels esi connected the, Uskinazar ek ventilation shaft par potty, surf 6-inch wide, flamethrower ka nozzle bilkle fit, hogaya, ek trigger pull any pour system, main jalti hui jelkeo bahadia. 50 yards door chupu exits se Japanese soldiers bahar Nikel. Ungjism ac og main gyre hu the jisa, bujaya nai ja saktada. Surf organo main, Williams any 7 major fortifications, neutralize car die. Joe positions Ekpor Marine Regiment KO Rock Chukiti, Woek High Admi any flamethrower Kusaf clear car D. Bad main use Medal of Honor Mila, Lekin Assault Hero, Wo Weapon of Joe Uskihoff Main Japanese Commander, Lieutenant General Tadamaki Kurabayashi, any Iwo Jima KO X Sol Tak Fortress Main Badown Main Lagadia the, Uska Defensive Principle Simple the, Haran Zamin Kalia Americans KO Kunesi Kimachikani paid. His force of 21,000 men had carved an underground world out of solid volcanic stone, an intricate network of tunnels stretching for miles. Supplies of food, water, and ammunition were carefully stored to sustain a siege lasting months. General Kurabayashi had done his homework. He understood American doctrine and their dependence on overwhelming firepower. To counter it, he placed his defenses on reverse slopes, safely out of reach of naval artillery. He outlawed reckless banzai charges, ordering his soldiers to remain in their fortified positions and fight until the end. In his mind, the island had been transformed into an unbreakable fortress. What he failed to anticipate was napalm. On the second day of fighting, modified Sherman tanks rolled into the battle. Captain Frank Caldwell, the 26th Marines, observed as the first Zippo tank advanced toward a subterranean stronghold that had withstood 2 full days of attacks. The flamethrower ignited, projecting a torrent of burning fuel nearly 100 yards into cave entrance. The fire behaved like liquid, flowing deep into the tunnel system, into every corridor, chamber, and concealed position. It was as if the mountain itself was breathing smoke, Caldwell later wrote. Then came the screams. Japanese troops burst into caves, their uniforms and bodies engulfed in flames. Marines cut down those who escaped. Those who remained inside were burned alive. A defensive complex expected to take a week to eliminate was rendered useless in just 20 minutes. On Iwo Jima, the 8 flame tanks consumed roughly 10,000 gallons of thickened fuel every day. Each vehicle depended on a dedicated CB support crew for repairs and refueling. Electricians mate Joseph Klein and shipfitter J.D. Patterson worked nonstop to keep the flamethrowers operational, often while under direct enemy fire. The psychological shock was immediate and profound. Japanese soldiers who had resisted artillery and gunfire without hesitation broke and ran at the sight of the flame tanks. Intercepted radio traffic revealed spreading terror. Phrases like demon fire and dragon tanks appear repeatedly in decoded messages. Private Toshio Yamada, one of the few Japanese soldiers to survive Iwo Jima, later recalled, "We were taught to die for the emperor. Bullets, shells, even bayonets, we accepted them, but the fire was different. It moved through the caves like a living creature. There was no fighting it, no hiding from it. It reached everyone." By March 1945, napalm's effectiveness was undeniable. General Curtis LeMay reached a conclusion that would alter the direction of the war. If incendiary gel could erase bunkers and tunnel systems, what devastation could it unleash on entire cities? March 9, 1945, 5:34 p.m. Northfield, Guam. Operation Meeting House. LeMay watched as the first of 334B, 29 superfortresses thundered down the runway. Each aircraft carried a deadly payload, 40 cluster bombs packed with 1,520 M, 69 incendiary devices. Their destination was Tokyo. For months, LeMay had struggled with high-altitude precision bombing. Jet streams scattered bomb formations, and persistent cloud cover concealed targets. Tonight, the strategy would change. At 30,000 feet, Japanese anti-aircraft fire proved lethally precise. The bombing results were disappointing. When Curtis LeMay assumed command of the 21st Bomber Command in January 1945, he understood the reality clearly: adapt or be replaced. The logic of destruction was brutally simple. A single incendiary cluster bomb could wipe out an area roughly 100 by 300 feet. Tokyo's neighborhoods were a perfect target: tightly packed wooden homes, paper partitions, straw flooring. Japan's war industry did not exist solely in massive factories. It was spread across thousands of small workshops embedded within residential districts. What high-altitude precision bombing failed to destroy, large-scale incendiary attacks could erase. LeMay made radical changes. Defensive guns were removed from the B-29s to increase bomb loads. Crews were ordered to fly at night at altitudes between 5,000 and 9,000 feet. Flying lower improved bombing accuracy and placed the aircraft beneath the most effective range of Japanese flak. Just after midnight on March 10th, Pathfinder aircraft reached Tokyo. They marked the target zone, a densely populated residential area measuring 3 by 4 miles and home to approximately 750,000 people, laying incendiaries in a large X-shaped pattern. The main bomber force followed, releasing 1,665 tons of firebombs in carefully spaced streams that formed a lattice of flames. Within half an hour, separate blazes fused into a single firestorm. Temperatures at street level climbed toward those of molten rock. Superheated air generated winds exceeding 100 miles per hour, ripping oxygen from shelters and feeding the inferno. Concrete surfaces bubbled, steel liquefied, and sections of the Sumida River boiled into vapor. Tokyo Fire Department Captain Susumu Takahashi recorded his final entry at 12:48 a.m. Fire uncontrollable. Equipment ineffective. The city is dying. Tokyo's fire service numbered 8,000 personnel with around 1,000 pieces of equipment, but only 3 ladder trucks capable of reaching above 30 feet. They had trained for ordinary air raids for conventional fires. Nothing had prepared them for this. The burning gel clung to gear, destroyed hoses, and turned firefighting water into scalding steam. By sunrise, 16 square miles of Tokyo lay in ashes. Conservative estimates place the dead at 87,500, while Japanese records suggest the toll exceeded 100,000. More lives were lost in that single night than in either atomic bombing that would follow. 1 million people were left without homes. 29 tail gunner Sergeant James C.R. later recalled. Flying at 5,000 feet, you could smell burning flesh. The thermal currents in the firestorm tossed our 65-ton bomber around like a piece of paper. And this was only the beginning. On March 11th, 313 B-29 struck Nagoya, obliterating the Mitsubishi aircraft engine plant along with the surrounding districts. 2 days later, Osaka's industrial core burned for 72 hours straight. On March 16th, Kobe's port facilities and shipyards were reduced to wreckage and ash. In just 10 days, incendiary raids destroyed more Japan's industrial capacity than 2 years of conventional bombing ever had. The air forces were burning through napalm faster than U.S. industry could replace it. Consumption outpaced production, forcing the creation of emergency manufacturing facilities. By June 1945, output had risen to levels never before seen. What had begun as a battlefield solution for clearing caves on remote islands was now being applied on a strategic scale against Japan itself. April 1st, 1945. Okinawa, the final and most brutal proving ground. If Iwo Jima had been hell, Okinawa was something beyond it. The island's 450,000 civilians were trapped between roughly 100,000 Japanese defenders and 180,000 American troops. Japanese forces had transformed the landscape into a fortress. Tombs, caves, ridgelines, everything became a firing position. Lieutenant General Mitsuru Ushijima had studied the lessons of Iwo Jima carefully. His soldiers dug deeper, reinforced more heavily, and prepared specifically for flame attacks. Water tanks were installed inside caves. Fire breaks were carved into tunnels. Improvised protective gear, mud-soaked uniforms, and wet cloth masks was issued in a desperate attempt to survive incendiaries. None of it worked. For Okinawa, the U.S. Army had converted the entire 713th Tank Battalion into flame units. 54 Sherman tanks were fitted with Ronson flamethrowers capable of hurling burning fuel 60 to 80 yards. Naval chemical units stockpiled 250,000 gallons of thickened fuel. Every Marine rifle company went into battle with attached flamethrower teams. The fighting around Wanna Ridge demonstrated how far napalm had evolved as a tactical weapon. Japanese offenses were layered and interlocked, positioned on reverse slopes that artillery and air power could not reach. Marines of the 1st Division spent 3 days advancing barely 100 yards, taking severe losses. On May 14th, the Marines improvised a new method. Barrels filled with incendiary gel were dragged to the top of the ridge. Rifle fire punctured the drums, and they were rolled downhill into Japanese positions. White phosphorus grenades ignited the flowing fuel. The ravine below turned into an inferno. Defensive positions that held for days were wiped out in a matter of hours. Private First Class Eugene Sledge, watching the attack, later wrote, "Japanese soldiers came pouring out of caves we didn't even know were there, their uniforms and bodies burning. Some tried to surrender, but it was already over. The napalm had done its work. They fell after a few steps, still on fire, even in death." The psychological toll on civilians was catastrophic. Following Japanese military orders, thousands had taken refuge in caves. When flame tanks approached, they faced a terrible choice: burn where they hid or run into machine gun fire outside. On May 30th, Marines discovered a cave near Shuri Castle sheltering approximately 450 civilians. Lieutenant John Stevens of the 6th Marine Division attempted to persuade them to surrender. They refused. Protocol took over. The flame tank crew issued 3 warnings in Japanese. There was no reply. The flamethrower fired, sending burning fuel deep into the tunnel network. Stevens later testified, "We could hear screaming for about 5 minutes. Then there was nothing. When we finally went inside, most of the bodies were women and children. The fire had devoured the available oxygen. Many of those inside died from suffocation before the flames ever reached them. In a grim way, it was the least painful outcome possible. The Army Chemical Warfare Service recorded every action in meticulous detail. On Okinawa alone, flame tanks burned through roughly 200,000 gallons of thickened petroleum. Underground strongholds that would have taken weeks to reduce with conventional arms were eliminated in a matter of hours. Defensive positions that had halted entire divisions collapsed when confronted by coordinated flame tank assaults. But the human cost, especially among civilians, was immense. Estimates indicate that incendiary weapons caused the deaths of at least 20,000 civilians on Okinawa, though the true number remains contested. A weapon designed to reduce American casualties proved devastatingly indiscriminate in practice. Colonel Unmack's flamethrower organization expanded rapidly, evolving from a small Seabees unit into a major operational force. Production plants in Hawaii ran nonstop. Training centers turned out hundreds of new flame tank crews every month. American industrial power had taken a laboratory innovation and transformed it into a system of mass deployment. By the summer of 1945, the shift was complete. The Pacific War had become a vast, uncontrolled blaze. Then came the peak of the air campaign. August 1945. General LeMay's B-29 formations now executed incendiary raids with near-mechanical regularity. The list of targets grew beyond major metropolitan centers to include smaller industrial cities. Intelligence assessments identified 180 Japanese urban areas vulnerable to firebombing. By late July, 67 cities had already been struck, some partially destroyed, others almost entirely erased. The scale of devastation was difficult to grasp. Each B-29 carried 40 cluster bombs. A raid of 300 aircraft could scatter close to 500,000 individual incendiary devices. Every single bomblet ignited a pool of fire roughly 15 feet across, burning for 6 minutes at temperatures hot enough to liquefy aluminum. Japan's firefighting system collapsed entirely. Throughout July, city after city burned. Fukui lost 60% of its built-up area on July 19th. Matsuyama saw 3/4 of the city destroyed on July 26th. Tsu followed 2 days later, suffering 85% devastation. The campaign advanced with industrial efficiency, each strike refining the methods of the last. Japanese industrial output cratered. Workers refused to enter factories they knew were likely targets. Rail networks failed as marshalling yards burned. Food distribution disintegrated when warehouses went up in flames. The civilian infrastructure that had supported Japan's war effort for 4 years was being extinguished under successive waves of petroleum fire. Former Prime Minister Prince Fumimaro Kono recorded in his diary, "The Americans have discovered our fatal weakness. We built our country from wood and paper. Now they are burning it down city by city. There's no defense against this demon fire." Japanese authorities attempted countermeasures. Entire neighborhoods were demolished to create fire breaks. Underground shelters with multiple exits were constructed. Civilians were issued crude protective gear made from treated fabric. None of it could stop the flames. None of the countermeasures succeeded. Burning petroleum penetrated every bunker, every tunnel, every supposed sanctuary. There was nowhere to escape it. Dr. Yoshio Nishina, Japan's foremost physicist, was assigned the task of finding a defense. His assessment to Imperial General Headquarters offered no hope. Once ignited, the gel adhered to everything it touched and could not be removed. Its burning temperature exceeded the tolerance of available materials. His conclusion was blunt. The only possible defense was to stop delivery of the weapon itself. With air superiority already lost, such prevention was impossible. Japan had no answer. August 1st, 1945. Preparations for invasion were underway. Operation Downfall, the invasion of the Japanese home islands, was scheduled for November. Planners analyzed the hard lessons of Iwo Jima and Okinawa. Defensive preparations on Kyushu were massive. Intelligence reports identified roughly 10,000 caves, 5,000 fortified bunkers, and vast underground systems. A conventional invasion was projected to cost as many as 1 million American casualties. The proposed solution was incendiary warfare on a scale never before attempted. Plans called for 75 flame tank battalions, more than 4,000 armor vehicles. Chemical units would accumulate 5 million gallons of thickened fuel. Flamethrower squads would be permanently assigned to every rifle company. Ahead of advancing troops, B-29s would conduct rolling firebombing campaigns to erase defensive positions. Undersecretary of War Robert Patterson assigned flame tank production the same priority as the Manhattan Project. The full industrial power of the United States was being redirected toward the manufacture of incendiary weapons. But the invasion never happened. August 6, 1945. Hiroshima. An atomic bomb killed approximately 70,000 people in an instant. The world recoiled at the sight of an entire city destroyed by a single weapon. Curtis LeMay, however, was unmoved. His incendiary campaign had already struck 67 cities. Tokyo alone had suffered more casualties than Hiroshima. The atomic bomb was dramatic, but the cumulative destruction inflicted by firebombing was far greater. August 9th. Nagasaki. Another atomic detonation. Another city erased. That same night, 95 B-29s dropped conventional incendiaries on Yalta. The resulting firestorm burned for 2 full days. On August 14th, the final major air raid took place. Even as Japanese leaders debated surrender, 160 B-29s attacked Kumagaya and Isazaki. Fires continued to spread while diplomats negotiated peace. August 15th, Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender. In his broadcast, he spoke of a new and most cruel bomb, referring to the atomic weapons. He made no mention of the weapon that had destroyed more of his nation than any other. The numbers told the real story. Between March and August 1945, incendiary attacks devastated 180 square miles across 67 Japanese cities. An estimated 300,000 to 500,000 civilians were killed. 8 million were left homeless. 40% of Japan's industrial capacity was eliminated. A 1946 National Defense Research Council report recorded that 40,000 tons of M69 incendiary bombs had been dropped on Japan during the war. The Pacific War did not truly end in a blinding nuclear flash, but in the fading glow of innumerable fires. The reckoning came quietly. Professor Louis Feser returned to Harvard, to the chemistry laboratory where it had all begun. He was awarded the Medal for Merit, the highest civilian honor the nation could bestow. His creation had helped bring the war to an earlier close, spared countless American lives, and permanently altered the nature of modern warfare. Yet the triumph carried a deep bitterness. In 1967, during the Vietnam War, Feser watched television reports showing napalm strikes. Children fleeing down roads, their bodies engulfed in flames. Entire villages reduced to ash. The weapon he had designed to break enemy defenses was now being used in densely populated areas. By June 1972, Feser could no longer remain silent. He wrote directly to President Richard Nixon, calling for an international prohibition on napalm. "When we developed napalm," he wrote, "we never envisioned its use as an anti-personnel weapon. Our focus was on structures and fortified positions. I do not claim moral authority simply because I invented it, but I believe its use must be restricted." The response came from Edward David Jr., the president's science advisor. He acknowledged that napalm's effects were difficult to foresee or regulate and stated only that Feser's concerns would be given careful consideration. Feser later described the reply as a dismissal. He died in 1977. His obituary in the Harvard Gazette highlighted his research on vitamin K and anti-malarial medications. There was no reference to napalm. The university had quietly removed the weapon from his public legacy. By then, the tactical shift was undeniable. The era of fixed defenses was over. No bunker could withstand liquid fire. No cave was deep enough to escape the creeping reach of incendiary gel. The volcanic strongholds of the Pacific, hewn from solid rock and defended with uncompromising resolve, had fallen to a weapon conceived in a Harvard basement. The 713th Tank Battalion was disbanded in 1946. Its flame tanks were dismantled, their specialized components destroyed. The Seabees who had built and maintained them returned to civilian life. Colonel Unmack's flamethrower organization was dissolved, its records sealed away. Veterans rarely spoke about what they had seen. Marine Corporal Raymond Hart, who fought on Iwo Jima, would say only, "The flamethrowers finished it." Woody Williams, the last surviving Medal of Honor recipient from Iwo Jima, devoted his post-war life to supporting Gold Star families and never spoke publicly about the weapon that had defined his battlefield role. Eugene Sledge later reflected, "We believed the Japanese were brutal. Then we used flamethrowers. War turns everyone into something monstrous." The military conclusions were stark. Resolve had been overcome by technology. Chemistry had triumphed over courage. Industrial power proved more decisive than any warrior tradition. The samurai ethos that had endured for centuries was extinguished in petroleum fire. Modern doctrine absorbed these lessons quickly. Every major military developed flame-based weapons. International law attempted restraint. The 1980 Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons limited, but did not outlaw, their use. The weapon that helped end one war would reappear in many others. The scientific legacy was equally conflicted. Research into jellied fuels advanced polymer chemistry, fire control methods, and material science. The aluminum soap compounds that made gasoline cling found peaceful uses in industry and medicine. Studies of extreme heat effects contributed to improved burn treatment. Yet the ethical questions endured. Was a firebombing of Tokyo a war crime? Were the civilian deaths on Okinawa justified by military necessity? Did incendiary warfare shorten the war enough to outweigh its suffering? Historians continue to argue these questions, finding no simple resolution. Japanese survivors organized the Association of Tokyo Air Raid Victims, collecting testimony and preserving memory. Museums in Tokyo, Osaka, and Kobe display warped artifacts, photographs of destruction, and long lists of names. School children learn about the night of black snow, when ash and burning debris fell from the sky like dark rain. The transformation of warfare was complete. The Pacific War began with torpedo bombers over Pearl Harbor and ended with the systematic burning of Japan. Between those moments, combat itself was reshaped. Individual bravery still mattered, but outcomes were decided by technology and industrial capacity. On Iwo Jima, Scorched coral formations still bear the marks of flame tanks nearly 80 years later. On Okinawa, seal caves hold remains of those who chose death rather than emerge into fire. In Tokyo, memorial parks stand where entire neighborhoods disappeared in a single night. Professor Fieser's formula was deceptively simple. Aluminum naphthenate plus aluminum palmitate mixed with gasoline, napalm. The mathematics of war had become chemistry. The chemistry of destruction had become mass production. The age of limited warfare had ended. Standing amid the ruins of Tokyo in September 1945, General Curtis LeMay surveyed the aftermath. "We burned, boiled, and baked more people to death in Tokyo in a single night than were vaporized at Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined," he later remarked. But it was war. They began it. We ended it. The Pacific Ocean had become a stage for the birth of modern total war, not through the atomic weapons that seized global attention, but through an unassuming gel that burned without mercy. Napalm reshaped warfare permanently. Conceived in a Harvard laboratory, it killed more Japanese civilians than any other American weapon. It consumed a nation that had believed itself shielded by destiny. The post-war strategic bombing survey reached a blunt conclusion. Japan would have surrendered by November 1945 even without the atomic bombs, even without Soviet intervention. The sustained firebombing campaign, more than any other single factor, had shattered Japan's ability to continue the war. For the scientists behind these weapons, the moral weight was heavy. Louis Fieser was far from alone in his remorse. Many chemists and engineers who contributed to incendiary warfare struggled with what their work had unleashed. The Seabees who modified flame tanks left behind almost no personal records. Units trained to construct had instead become agents of annihilation. For Japanese survivors, the consequences endured across generations. Children who escaped through streets of fire grew into adults haunted by recurring nightmares. The scent of gasoline could trigger terror decades later. Burn scars remained as lifelong evidence of what had happened. Yet from the devastation emerged an unexpected outcome. The Japan reduced to ashes by American firebombing would later become one of the United States' closest allies. Cities erased by fire rose again as centers of trade, innovation, and culture. Tokyo, site of the most destructive single air raid in history, re-emerged as one of the world's great cities. Within military academies worldwide, the Pacific firebombing campaign is studied both as a model of strategic effectiveness and as a warning about the nature of total war. The seamless fusion of tactical and strategic incendiary use demonstrated how a single weapon system could scale from clearing bunkers to erasing cities. International law has tried to respond. The 1980 Protocol on Incendiary Weapons restricted, but did not prohibit, their use. Military necessity continues to outweigh humanitarian restraint in many conflicts. In Japan, remembrance serves different meanings. For some, the firebombing stands as proof of militarism's consequences. For others, as evidence of wars in humanity. For most, they are simply an immense human tragedy that must never be repeated. Each year, memorial ceremonies grow quieter as survivors dwindle. American memory is more conflicted. The atomic bombings dominate public consciousness, while the months-long incineration of cities, responsible for greater loss of life, has faded into footnotes. This selective remembrance serves a purpose. It is easier to confront two bombs than to reckon with prolonged campaign of fire. The journey from Fieser's laboratory to the ruins of Tokyo took barely 3 years. In that brief span, napalm evolved from a chemical curiosity into the most devastating conventional weapon ever deployed. Today, napalm and its derivatives remain in arsenals around the world. The principle unchanged. Fuel transformed into a substance that clings and burns. In his final years, Professor Fieser taught chemistry and co-authored textbooks with his wife, Mary. He rarely spoke about napalm, choosing instead to focus on other scientific achievements. Yet the burden of what he had created never fully left him. In private moments, he wondered what might have been different. Questions he knew were futile. If not him, someone else would have done it. The chemistry was straightforward. The military demand was overwhelming. The industrial capacity was immense. Once modern science met modern war, the weapon was inevitable. Napalm revealed a fundamental truth. In total war, There are no limits to human ingenuity when it comes to destruction. The same industrial power that improves lives can be redirected toward ending them on a massive scale. As the last witnesses pass away, memory hardens into history. Scars fade, ruins are rebuilt, traumas absorbed, but the capacity for such devastation remains. The war ended, the fires went out, but the questions napalm raised still burn. The lesson was unmistakable. In the age of total war, victory belonged to those who could create the most terrible weapons and were willing to use them. Japan's defenses, carved from volcanic stone and defended with suicidal resolve, collapsed under American incendiary assault. The Fortress Pacific burned. From its ashes emerged a modern world, permanently altered by a weapon born in a university laboratory, tested on a playing field, and carried across an ocean of islands until it consumed an empire.